Hey everybody, it's Dana. So I know you're probably ready for these videos to move us into what essential oils should we be using for certain goals that you have with your dog. And we're going to get to that. But I want you to, oh dear, he's turned the stool over. Hold on a second. I want you to think about essential oils and how you might choose which oil will help you achieve a certain result. So there is a bit of methodology to all of this, and a lot of it is extremely scientific, but some of it can be boiled down to some very basics. And so we're not going to go deep, but we are going to give you some clues into how that works. One of the first ways is to look at what is known as the notes of the essential oil. So at one point it was classified in almost this musical arrangement of how the notes or the fragrances and the tones of these essential oils came together. So you will hear people talk about top note, middle note, and base note. The top notes are those notes, those fragrant notes that we pick up on very easily that helps us distinctly identify what an essential oil is. Lemon has a very bright top note, for example. And then there are those middle tones. Well, let me back up. The top notes will actually be the first thing that you smell. It's sort of those first molecules that come out of the bottle. And they will basically flash off much more quickly than the middle, and certainly more quickly than the base notes. So middle note's going to linger around a little bit longer, and a base note's going to hang out quite a long time on your skin, or if you've made contact with fabric or in the air and things of that nature. It may stay around for many hours, where the top note may have flashed off within, a number of minutes. So start to think about when you're experiencing a fragrance or essential oil for the first time, what is it that you're picking up? And do you then find different tones of those molecules showing up in your experience? Okay. You'll also hear people talk about, and this is why when you really start looking at reference books, there's a ton of information in there, and it may take you a while to figure out what it all means. But you'll hear people begin talking about things like monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes and alcohols and phenols and so on and so on, right? There's a whole list of these scientific ways of describing what these molecules do, right? How they behave and how they function. And so this understanding of the notes and then these very scientific ways in which these aromatics work together and how they function when used by us or when used by our animals will help understand what it is that's necessary to bring an essential oil into the wellness program for a certain purpose, right? So monoterpenes are basically going to be in that top note, middle note area. They're going to be lighter, a little bit sweeter in their smell. And they will be considered stimulating and uplifting. So when we think about trying to brighten the day, lift our spirits, enhance our mood, things of that nature, then we're in those top and middle notes looking for monoterpenes, right? Some of those essential oils will basically be things like lemon, orange, tangerine, grapefruit. Tea tree even starts to arrange itself in this category. Black pepper, if you've ever smelled pepper, you know that hits you right in the nose. Frankincense, fennel, and cinnamon. There are many others that will fall into that category, but you get the idea of what it is when we're talking about that top note. And then we're looking for one that sort of makes us feel good. That's a top note monoterpene description. There are also essential oils that will have monoterpene alcohols and phenols. Again, we're in this stimulating and uplifting category. These would be things like rose, bergamot, geranium, lavender, clove, oregano, and thyme. So as you think about those oils, think about how when you've experienced the aromatics of that oil or that herb, right, or even a fragrance that has that characteristic, what that feels like when you smell it, right? So we are looking for those oils that are, this is the stimulating and uplifting category, and we just moved into alcohols and phenols. There's another category called esters, Esters. This begins to move us into the relaxing and soothing range. So those oils that start to offer a bit of calmness to our energetics. That would be things like Roman chamomile, clary sage, lavender. You're going to see lavender fall in a number of categories. Remember, you've heard us say lavender has a significant number of benefits. It's sort of a universal oil, if you will, and so it's going to show up in a lot of places. But we also move here into wintergreen and frankincense. Within this relaxing category, we also have something called aldehydes and ketones. They then start to move into relaxing with a cooling component. These will be things like melissa, lime, ginger, lemongrass, peppermint, sage, spearmint, and thyme. Okay, so an essential oil can fall into more than one category in some cases. Not all of them do, but some of them sort of have a different property and different layers of properties. Okay. Then we move down into some of those earthy aromas. Those are going to be where our base notes are. And you'll know them as things like more of the root, the root properties of essential oil or essential oils that we have extracted from roots. These are going to be things like patchouli, vetiver, cedarwood, some of those richer, more earthier oils, okay? And we can also have an uplifting and calming, right? So we have uplifting and stimulating. We can have uplifting and calming, meaning we need to get ourselves out of a funk, but we don't want to get overly stimulated. We're in a category then called sesquiterpene alcohols. The one just above was sesquiterpenes. Now we're in a sesquiterpene alcohol. These can be things like carrot seed, sandalwood, valerian falls into this category. So it was a sesquiterpene. We mentioned it specifically as a sesquiterpene alcohol. So whenever you see reference books, and I've started this crazy big spreadsheet so that I can keep track of a lot of this stuff, you'll see people making reference to that. And when I first started with essential oils, I'm like, what difference does that make to me? I don't care. But I should have. I should have paid a whole lot more attention and documented things back then. The reason we care is when you are trying to come up with a blend, right? You want to figure out what can I put in the diffuser today, or what can I use to help support a specific goal that I have. You may need to make some decisions based on bringing some of those properties together. So that moves us into talking about blending essential oils. And I'm not going to do a deep discussion here. I will do it in my private teen group after the holidays, but in short, you'll see a lot of recipes, right? So there are a lot of recipes that are shared for like oils to put in your diffuser today, and oils to put in some blended recipe of a air freshener or a spritzer for your fabrics or an outdoor annoyance spray or whatever it may be. There is a little bit of methodology to that, right? When people create those, generally speaking, they're looking for top note to have about 3 drops, or a ratio, if you will, 3 drops of top notes, 2 drops of a middle note, and 1 drop of a base note, right? If you're going to make bigger volumes, then the scale increases, but the ratio does not change very much. Now, you can ebb and flow, right? There's no rule that says it's got to be exactly 3, 2, 1. This is just sort of the guiding principle. And as you start to say, well, I really like a little more, a little less of certain characteristics of the blends or the creations that you're making, that's your choice. And that's where sometimes a little bit of the magic can show up to make it something that is more appropriate for you, or the things that you're working on. Me, I tend to stick with a lot of the blends that have already been created by Young Living. I love them. And there was nobody better at the mastery of that than Gary Young. So you'll hear me often make a recommendation for certain blends that just have beautiful purpose in what it is that we're trying to do. But if you don't have that blend and you're saying, well, I have these oils, I have this collection of 10 or 12 or 40 oils that you have, what can I use to try and achieve a certain result until I can get, something else that perhaps may be a little bit more appropriately suited for the long-term goal that you have. And so that's where this comes in, this blending concept of looking at the notes, looking at their purpose and how they function scientifically within the chemistry of putting those essential oils together and then using them on or around ourselves. I will also share with you one of the things that I learned with starting to put together these recipes is that the order in which you add them to the mixture matters, right? So it's a lot like my instructor described it as creating a soup, right? If I add ingredients, right? If I add the ingredients and I've left one out, I don't have the same soup. It's not exactly the same. It may be very similar, but it's not the same product. So it's important that we document our recipe as we go, that you make notes and say, this is what I did. This is the order in which I did it. And, once you have an outcome, decide whether you like it or not, whether it achieved what you thought it was supposed to, or it smelled the way you wanted it to or not. When we start putting the essential oils together, it is not just lavender and frankincense in a bottle that share the same space. Putting them in, sort of swirling that around and letting that marinate for a little while creates a brand new molecular structure chemical product, right? It's no longer 2 ingredients, it is one new something, right? And so very important for you to understand that it becomes something new when you start putting these things together. And when you have two pieces that became something new and you add a third, we still have now yet another new component, right? We have another new result. If I mix those together differently in a different order or different ratio, I have something that is perhaps altogether completely different in terms of how it will smell and what it may accomplish. So just be aware of those concepts as you start thinking about putting essential oils together. And often if you see something that, somebody suggesting a recipe and you don't have all of the ingredients, you may or may not be able to make a substitution. In some cases you can, but you may not be able to if you're choosing an essential oil that does not come from the same category of maybe it's top note, middle note. In other words, you can't sub a base note for a top note, right? And you may not be able to substitute a alcohol for a phenol kind of thing. If you have similar constituents, they may not be the exact same oil, but they have similar constituents, then you may be able to make that substitution. So just be aware of that concept as you go through building some recipes.